It's very possible that a Learn from People Who Lived It retreat is on the way after having this conversation with Lucy Oliver. One of the reasons I booked Lindsay Oliver on our podcast was because when she reached out to me, she said, quote, "I'd like to steer away from quick tips and tricks." And if you know anything about me, I'm all into that kind of thinking. Because here's the thing, when your mental or spiritual health isn't doing very well, there is no quick fix. And here's the truth. It's a process. It's a journey. And the faster you latch onto that idea, the better off you'll be. One of the things we're going to spend some time on today is breathwork and meditation and prayer because it's so beneficial in so many ways. And it's kind of easy to do. And here's Lucy really quick kind of explaining what it's about for her.
My heart rate slows down, my brain wave activity slows down, I probably start talking more slowly. I might start sounding more British, more American when I talk fast.
Me too. Yes, we're going to get into some heavy stuff today, but we're also going to laugh a little bit while we do it, because that's my approach. This doesn't have to be the heaviest thing on planet Earth. It can feel that way. And I know it because I've been there. But I also know that there's a joyful way to have these discussions. And so that's the goal of today's podcast. So sit back and enjoy Lucy Oliver, all the way from Portugal.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
Hello, my name is Lucy and I'm coming on here from Lisbon, Portugal. Very happy to be here.
Never been there before. Lucy, welcome to the show. What story are you here to share today?
Well, my story I want to share is just the impact of nervous system regulation, which maybe doesn't sound like the most exciting thing, but for me, it was absolutely transformational, and I believe it's fundamental to physical and mental health and well-being.
Love it. Who do you hope hears our message today?
Well, many different groups of people, but definitely people who feel like me when I started this journey through the company and creating what I do today, which is just feeling somewhat disconnected from yourself, maybe feeling misunderstood, not believed potentially by the medical system, or just really tired of hearing the everything looks fine when you know it's not. Also leaders, teachers who want to create environments that are more regulated and more conducive to learning and work. And I think most importantly, people who are just really ready to they want to go in a deeper level to understand themselves and to actually create what they want in their lives, but coming at it from a place of a scientific basis of really understanding human physiology, and then also this deeper emotional and very personal piece of transformation, which I don't see put together very often. So long answer,
awesome.
But
long answer. It's good. No, I'll take it. I'm thrilled to have you on today. And as I dive into, Reprecision, which is the company that you run and do your retreats at, I mean, everything's just a yes for me, which is so cool. I asked you earlier if you have a sense of humor. And so pardon me as I make a quick introduction, but you grew up with a lot of digestive issues that led to some hospitalizations. Then you had hormone issues, sleep issues, 7 years of anorexia, anxiety, massive rebound, weight gain, binge eating, insulin issues, hyperthyroid, adrenal fatigue, bloating that made you look 8 months pregnant, brain fog. But otherwise, it sounds like a great childhood.
Yeah. Definitely some obstacles, some good gems in there also, but yeah, there's a few obstacles to overcome, but I think they also build character. But I would like to help other people reduce the amount of suffering that's necessary.
Yeah, well, I brought all of that up because, so many people come to this podcast because they are experiencing those things, and they're trying to figure out why am I experiencing these things? And you and I have some common through lines in our stories, although we don't know each other. You started your company in 2018. That's about the time that I started to battle really serious back pain, anxiety, and a deep depression. It took me a few years of walking into every single doctor and them not being able to find anything wrong with my back. And then it turned into gut issues where they couldn't find anything wrong with my gut. You know this story.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that eventually led to me getting shingles. And then I had a series of 3 panic attacks in a row. And on that third and final panic attack, I went to the hospital, and I was sitting in that hospital bed, if you will. And the doctors came back into me, and here's me sitting in the hospital right there, right? And I've just gotten every single test imaginable, Lucy. And they walk back in and they say, "We can't find anything wrong with you."
So that's normal.
I know in this moment because I've been on somewhat of a spiritual journey since the age of 23, maybe since the age of 12. We could argue that point later if we want. But I knew if it wasn't physical, then it had to be mental, or it had to be spiritual, or it had to be both. So I left work. I retired from my career. I went to a retreat similar to something that you put on, and I found my clarity. I found my why. I figured it all out again. Had a team of great people helping me uncover that. And so this is why you can see I'm so excited to have you on today, because I think what you're doing resonates so viscerally with me inside, because I know this is me giving you a long answer this time, so I'm sorry. But every day I'm speaking with people who are just trying to figure it out, and they want to find this reason why it's not making sense. They want to find this reason why their body is ailing them. And what I keep trying to impress upon them is you might want to look in a different place. And this is the work that you bring to the table. So let's start with all that stuff I just mentioned, and your childhood, which must have been quite challenging. What was that like, going through all of those things? And, what was the support system around you like? What were the doctors in your life like? Give me a little breakdown there.
Yeah, I will. And also, I did have shingles. That wasn't on the list at like 25. And they're like, that doesn't happen. Like,
here's mine. Here you go. There's my sexy shingles right there on my face.
All down my back. Yeah, it was horrible.
Oh, they're the worst.
Yeah, really awful. Yeah, well, I grew up in the north of England, in Northumberland, which most people know from the Viking shows. It put it on the map.
Okay.
Probably have more ancient history than current activity. There's not a lot going on these days. But north of England, it's kind of the typical kind of meat and potatoes, very farm lifestyle. And I guess I was just always a bit of a weird kid. From being born, I wouldn't eat any kind of meat. My mum didn't know what to do with me because, again, meat and potatoes kind of place. And looking back, it was because most probably I just couldn't digest it. This is how it all started to tie into nervous system work. It all makes sense with hindsight. But so I just... yeah, sort of fuddled through that and kind of definitely created some food issues. And then the digestive piece was the sort of first part that started to emerge in the puzzle. And yeah, I ended up in hospital and I got the shoulder shrug. I got it's IBS, and this is just something you're going to have for the rest of your life. And
take a probiotic, you'll be fine.
Not even, it was just like take painkillers when it happens, and that's it. That's just how you live now. And so it was quite reoccurring. And then it was a bit later on, getting more into teenage years, where like my hormones just weren't producing. Again, makes sense looking back because of this really severe nervous system dysregulation. And going through the medical system, which is the NHS in the UK, I think it's quite similar in the US, quite frankly. Different setup, but probably same information and answers. And it was just, looking back, kind of mind-blowing, and I would say a lot more harmful than helpful. But when you're 17, 18, 19, the doctor in the white lab coat's talking to you, and so you think, well, that's how it is. That's clearly my destiny. And I was just kind of told all of these things were going to exist forever. I was fundamentally, flawed. There was no way to fix this. and that was it. And I should, go for therapy because I'll have psychological damage because of it. And all of these, all the even crazier things. And so I think that was the first part of when I was really trying to figure things out, just like you. It's like, why is everything so separate? You go to these doctors, you went to the gastroenterologist, the endocrinologist, there's the cardiologist, all the ologists. And not everything's, you're not just disconnecting the mind from the body, you're disconnecting every part of the body from each other. And that was such a big part of what I wanted to do, was bring it all back together. And not just the parts of the body, but the physical, the mental, the emotional, nutritional, and then this existential, bigger piece. You just don't really find together. It's all very separate. And as just a regular human being walking through life with all sorts of demands on you, it's very hard to spend the time figuring out what's going on. And just to have the time and the energy, or even the desire. Fortunately, my background's in science, and so I actually enjoyed reading a lot of these science papers, and I was sufficiently stubborn to not accept the answers they were giving me. It took a while, but I fully understand where people are like, well, this is what this medical professional who's studied for 5+ years is telling me. That must be the truth. And so, yeah.
Can I ask you a question quick?
Yes.
What were your folks like while you were trying to get through all of this? Did you have support? Were people going like, "Hey, Lucy, we're going to figure this out," or were people going, "Hey, Lucy, you better figure this out"? There's kind of the two sides of that coin. What was it for you?
Yeah, I think my parents are just really believe in the system. My mum actually had breast cancer at my age, and she went through the whole process. Fortunately, her life was saved. And I think because of that, she became a real believer in the system. And I'm definitely not against it in many ways. But I think in a lot of chronic health issues, there's just such a massive missing piece, many pieces. And we see it, from research in a lab, the actual scientists doing this research on human physiology, to actually getting implemented into medical practice, which, if it even makes it, is usually about 18 years gap before it's sort of approved and actually makes it into a syllabus. And then certain things just never make it at all. And so, again, I think when you're an outsider on all of this, it's just like, okay, well, that's just how it is. And that's where my parents stood. And so they were incredibly supportive in getting me to the best specialists and really trying to figure it out through the medical system. But it was actually kind of a bit later on. I sort of went with it for a while until everything really started to fall apart. And that's where a lot of those symptoms started to come in. The anorexia was prior, but all of this fallout was because I kind of followed the medical advice, and it just got worse and worse and worse, because all we were doing was we were just patching, patching symptoms, never getting to the root. And so it just keeps kind of evolving, and the only solution is, just like another medication or just another thing. And so it had to get very bad. Let's
spend some time there. Let's spend some time on that, getting to the root, right? And that's one of the things that I'm really excited to talk to you about today. And folks, if this goes well, if the conversation goes well, Lucy stays on the podcast with me for the entire time that I hope she will. I hope to talk about things like, playful healing, boundary setting, gratitude, breath work. But I'll tell you, one of the things that got my attention, Lucy, was when you wrote to us about being on the show, and there was this line in there that you said, and I highlighted it. It said, "I would like to steer away from quick tips and tricks." And I thought, thank God, right? Because everybody and their mom wants the quickest fix possible. And I get that. As a guy who was... Listen, when you have this shit on your face, you want it gone as quickly as you possibly can. When you're dealing with gut issues, you want them gone as quickly as you possibly can. But getting to the root of it, solving the root issue, it just takes a little bit of time, but not as much as people might think, right? Not as much time as people might think. And so, okay, in the spirit of not doing quick fixes and quick tips and quick tricks, let's talk to somebody right now that's really in that space of, let's start with gut health. Their gut health sucks right now. And I've been through this road, you've been through this road, and it's just this vicious cycle that keeps on going, right? You're like, my stomach sucks, and so it's got me anxious, and then I'm anxious, and so my gut sucks, and it's just like, it keeps looping and looping. And so why would somebody want to look into, this regulation component that you talk about?
Yeah, great question. And this is when it goes back to like first principles thinking, also like systems thinking. I think there's a lot of tech terms or terms I've thrown about in tech that really apply to understanding all of the systems in the body and how they're connected, because they very much are. And so with the gut, there's just such a direct connection to mental health, because and vice versa, how stressed we feel, what's going on mentally for us, are we overworked, do we have repressed emotional issues, which most people do from some level of trauma from childhood. And then there's this direct connection via the vagus nerve, and actually the brain and the gut at one point were the same. They separate during the growth of the embryo, and so you have the enteric nervous system in the gut, and which is hundreds of millions of neurons. And so there's a really good, like, super highway of communication between the two, and it's vital. And so, if you have a really high pressure job, if you're dealing with family struggles, financial trouble, relationship struggles, all of these things, it's going to affect digestion. And so when we're talking about the autonomic nervous system, which the vagus nerve forms a big part of, what we see with most people who are dealing with digestive issues is that they're really stuck in this sympathetic nervous system state, which is the typically known as the fight or flight state of the nervous system. There's also a freeze and fawn component that tend to get missed out. And so it just means we're kind of in this constant threat response, which makes sense when you look at modern life. And it's not just about running away from tigers anymore. It can come, you can get these threats in the form of emails, and financial pressure is a huge one. Even just things of like, what am I even doing with my life? It can be such a bigger existential piece. So when you're trying to condense this down to like, here's 4 things you can do I mean, you can do them, but it feels so reductionist. And I mean, a lot of science is reductionist because we're trying to understand. So I very much get it when people just want like, oh, just tell me what I need to do. But you really have to look at all of these different components that are going in. On the physical side, are you potentially overtraining if you're a weekend warrior and working very hard during the week? Are you, is there some kind of physical irritation from food sensitivities or pharmaceutical drugs? Mentally, there's overworrying, stress, anxiety. Nutritionally, are you even getting the right nutrients to rebuild the gut lining? And it can go on and on emotionally, all of these repressed things. So it's hard to really condense it down, but it's such a key part, and just really understanding how important the integrity of the gut lining is, how we lose the peristalsis, the motility of the gut when we're in a sympathetic, like activated state, because we're in this threat response. It's not important to digest at that moment. To be able to digest, we have to get into that parasympathetic state, which is relaxation, digestion, healing. And for some people, it's really hard. If you feel under threat, it's very hard to get into that state. Or if you're eating at your desk while working, very hard to get into that state. And so really trying to understand, how can I get there? And that's something that we do on our programs, is active training of understanding what that feels like, and just getting a deeper understanding of the physiology of it. Obviously, once we're very aware of what's going on inside us, how our brain and body connects, it makes it much easier to make better decisions. And you don't need those quick tips as much, because you have more of a fundamental shift in how you're approaching these decisions that you're making.
Yeah. So, one of the things that you do, and I'll put this up on the screen, is you've got these great, kind of 5, 10, and 21 day retreats that you offer folks. And it's an opportunity to come in and do that thing we're just talking about, which is reset the nervous system. And so I really would love, I love your description on, I think you've done a good enough job of articulating why it might be important to reset the nervous system, but what is the how-to? What is the how-to? Is it breath work? Is it gratitude? Is it boundaries? Is it all of the above? Help us understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, again, hard to condense into, these 5 things, but really on a sort of macro level, what we're looking at is, first of all, really understanding. So much better understanding of the brain and the body, how you can create more coherence between the two. Like I just said, when you understand that better, it's kind of in that process of self-mastery of okay, if I actually know what's going on inside, I can choose what's better for me. The second piece is processing emotion. It's such a huge part of the puzzle that gets very overlooked. So we separate physical medicine from sort of the more mental, psychological component. And there's a real limit to therapy. Generally, the most prescribed thing for anyone dealing with anxiety or any kind of mental health condition is to go down the therapy counseling route. Not to say there's no benefit in it, but it can be quite challenging to really process emotions at a more kind of subconscious level, because you're just talking with your rational mind. So it can be hard to tap into what's actually going on. Whereas most things that have happened to us are stored in the body, in the fascia. So being able to release that and process it is really important. Also understanding like just the energy generation component. So it's really hard to function well in the world if your little energy generating plants in your cells, the mitochondria, aren't working properly. It's going to make everything harder, and your vitality is going to go way down. And it's hard to recover if you don't have the energy to recover. And that is the big theme of what we do. Obviously, you can't avoid all stress in life. You can become a monk, you can hide in the hills, like there'll still be something to stress you out.
Right.
And it's not about just taking on more. Resilience is important, but we can't just take on more and more and more. But we can learn how to help ourselves recover from the stresses that come our way, because every time we face a certain stress, our body mobilizes energy to be able to respond to the threat. So traditionally that was, fighting or running away from it. Now it can actually be more like people pleasing, not saying no, or even like freeze, and kind of getting into that sort of functional freeze point, almost like of a burnout. And so it's really important to be able to generate that energy and also like complete these stress cycles. And so on our retreats, our goal is to educate. So we have educational workshops, but then we also put that learning into action. And I think action is such an important word, because obviously there's hours and hours and hours, years and years of information on the internet. Like you can find anything with AI, you can ask it anything. You can find all of this information, but what's really important is putting it into action in a way that it can triggers the neuroplasticity process, meaning that it triggers your brain to start making new neural connections, so that this becomes more of a default and a habit going forward. And then additionally,
can I pause you there for just a second? Because, we're starting to talk about this idea of making the new wiring connections. And I've interviewed several people over the last couple of years that are using psychedelics to open up the mind and kind of get into that space. But I also know that there are breathwork techniques that I use personally, right? Some somatic breath techniques that can kind of take me to that non-ordinary state of consciousness, where I'm able to see some things maybe that I couldn't before. And so I wanted to interject that really quick, because, as you're talking and you're going, you should do this and you should do this. But I think the question that people always have is, but how do I do that?
Yes.
And so those are a couple of ways that I've heard that people do what you're talking about. So give me your thoughts on that and then keep going. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, psychedelics are one way it can help with neurogenesis, sort of creating these new pathways. And it creates more plasticity and malleability of the brain post experience. On our retreats, we really focus on endogenous intervention. So just things that are coming from within yourself. You're not relying on any other substance. But for that neuroplasticity process, what's really important is generally quite a strong trigger. So we'll often see people make a big shift if they have like a near-death experience or something big happens in their life. So what we do within the retreat is we have opportunities to have what we call kind of peak experiences. It's commonly called a peak experience, which creates that emotional trigger. But additionally, what we're doing is combining many modalities. So they're working together synergistically to guide you through the process, with the first part being just understanding what is going on, because when you have the consciousness of that, it's a much easier way to direct these neural pathways in the direction you want them to go. If we don't know where we're going, what do we do? Yeah. And then
no, it's brilliant.
And then we're working on really unwinding the nervous system. So that takes the form of things like somatic processing exercises, things like TRE, tension release exercises. And then we kind of get into a more activated state and also our neuromeditation. So we do QEG brain mapping and neurofeedback, which is literally working to optimize brain. Yeah. So QEG brain map is basically ours is a 19-point map. So you put on one of those really sexy looking swim cap type things.
Yeah, skull cap. Yeah.
And so it's got 19 electrodes, and it measures completely non-invasively the electrical activity at 19 different points of the brain. So you compare that to a sort of big database of brain maps, and we can get a general idea of what's going on in the brain. And from there, we design a personal neurofeedback protocol. We do something called neuromeditation. So it's actually using real-time feedback via electrodes that are reading the electrical activity of the brain to be able to effectively expedite the process of getting into a more meditative state. Meditation always gets recommended. Oh, what should you do to relax? Meditate. And I'm sure people have tried and they get very frustrated, or they sit there for like 20 minutes just thinking about their to-do list. Or
right.
For me, it just sort of like reinforced neuroticism, like, and so what's great about the neuromeditation is it's somewhat of a disruptor, where you're able to get feedback when your brain waves are at the functioning how we want them to function based on what we're trying to achieve. Similarly, HRV training, heart rate variability training, another type of biofeedback. We use that because it shows the balance in the autonomic nervous system. So you're getting real-time feedback and able to understand like where your nervous system's at and what really helps it to get into that parasympathetic state. And so if we're looking for like quicker ways to regulate ourselves, things like breath can be so important, not necessarily, breath work taking you to like psychedelic levels, like holotropic breath work, but even just things like a extended exhale. It's not going to fix every situation, but it can be a really nice signal to the body that actually you're safe. So, an inhale for around 2 counts, exhaling for around 4 counts. And that safety word is such a key part of it, because if we feel under threat, it's very hard to get out of that sympathetic threat response state and get into the parasympathetic state.
So I'd love to say at this stage of the game, box breathing is a super easy way for people to jump into a breathwork practice. And I always explain it to dudes, especially. I'm like, bro, Navy SEALs use this. Okay. Yeah. So if it works for them, it might work for you. I learned transcendental meditation a number of years ago, which I really credit as saving my life. It slowed me down enough to just see what was really happening. I'm with you, right? Just extended inhales and exhales, and just try to slow the breath down as much as you can help you out. But, then you always get people who will say, well, wait a second, when I'm right in the middle of this situation, I can't just stop and breathe. And I get that. But the point that I want to make, and I think Lucy will back me up on this, is meditation prepares you for the moments of stress. And it's like the precursor. It's like you do all of the work early, and then when you get to the moment, you're calmer going through it. Your thoughts on that?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a training, and really everything's a training. Whatever you're doing every day, you're training your body for something. Whether you're sitting poorly or eating badly, you're training your brain and your mind to do things. And so if we can just add that extended exhale, when you wake up, right before eating is amazing, because you're able to help stimulate that parasympathetic nervous system response so that it helps you digest. When you're stuck in traffic and it's very easy to feel irritated, can you just extend it? Or like waiting in a line at the grocery store, or just wherever you have a couple of seconds. And I think that's the thing. It takes such little time, but the more we can do it and repeat it, the more it's going to become a default. That is the neuroplasticity process. It's just repeating it.
Would you help us understand what you mean by that breath work in the morning? And would you mind if we just kind of did it right now? If you and I slowed down enough during a podcast interview to just take people through a process. And so I really want to encourage, if you're okay with this, if people just take a minute with us and watch what happens to your melon when you slow down. Do you require music for your breath work? I have some on standby if you require relaxing music, but although it's not imperative, is it?
I usually do about 3 breaths. So I keep it pretty short because then you've got no excuse. You can fit that in anytime.
Help us understand what you do.
So for me, say before I'm going to eat a meal, or before coming onto a podcast or giving a presentation, where it's very easy to get into that sort of like accelerated mode, whether it's because of excitement or stress or whatever's going on, is just take an inhale for around 2 counts, and you don't need to force it. So just a nice inhale. And then if you did around 2 counts, you're going to exhale for around 4. And I personally prefer exhaling through the mouth. You can exhale through the nose. I find through the mouth, I can slow it down a lot more. And
you kind of get that yoga jaw that they talk about.
Yeah. And in that moment, as you're exhaling, can you just let go? Can you just, let the jaw go loose? Can you let the shoulders relax? Can you let the tension in your stomach drift away? Like, can you feel into where there is any tension? And I notice it immediately. My heart rate slows down. My brain wave activity slows down. I probably start talking more slowly. I might start sounding more British, more American when I talk fast.
Me too.
But yeah, it's really simple. And it's not to say that doing some slow breaths is going to fix all of the problems, but it's actually amazing how much power it can have when you get used to doing it frequently and just sending those little signals that everything's okay. I'm okay in this moment. It's helping you reconnect connect the mind and the body. We spend so much time in our minds. And it's a huge issue. And that was probably my number 1 issue. I was just so in my head. Yeah, I couldn't get in my body. And so you just completely disconnect from it. And I think that's a huge root of
you mentioned something earlier that I'd love to touch on for just a second. You know, you talked about talk therapy, and it's really popular right now. And you know, there's BetterHelp and all these other places, and there's 30 therapists down the street that are just dying to talk to you right now. And I love what you said. There is a real place for talk therapy, and there are people who will benefit from it greatly. As a man who spent 20 years in and out of therapy, working with people, I'm going to offer everybody listening to us right now the singular takeaway that I have from cognitive behavioral therapy that I think will change the game for you. And it kind of goes in line with what we just did, Lucy. You know, in cognitive behavioral therapy, there's this principle there of ground yourself in truth. What is real? And what I love about the breath work that you just did, the 3 simple in, out for 4, in, out for 4, in, out for 4, is in those 3 breaths that you're taking there. What is real about your life? What is real about what's going on and around you right now? All the anxiety, all the floating thoughts that are up here, you know, look at them for a second. And are any of them really grounded in truth? Or are they just all make-believe things that you've conjured up in your brain about what's going to happen? Because you're looking and listening to 2 people that it sounds like I'm really good at getting outside of myself and my thoughts and letting those things just take over. I'm so good at it, right? And I need this. That's why I need this stuff. I need to breathe. I need to ground myself in truth. And so love that exercise. Love to ask yourself, are you okay? Are the people around you okay? Is your family okay? Yeah. Do you have food? Are you nourished? Is your health okay? And, you know, and if you can check all those boxes, then I think you have to look at yourself and you have to say, I'm okay. I'm okay right now, which can help people settle down immensely. And it's something that I still have to practice from time to time, but I'm telling you, it's valuable. And hearing the words that you're, using today, it reminds me of how valuable that little nugget, once was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we talk more about breath work, or could we move on maybe to something else?
Yeah, well, I was actually going to just mention a point
finish your thought.
With what you just said, which is when you're in this sympathetic activated state, we also are our focus technically narrows, because we're in this survival state and we lose a lot of executive function, which is our higher processing power of the brain that makes logical decisions. And so it's really easy when we're in this sort of hectic mode to make bad choices, things we might regret later. And also we can spin these stories out of control. So when you're saying, is that even true? If you can take time just to have 3 deep breaths, which there isn't much of an excuse not to. And that's why, a lot of people say, well, a whole hour of breath work, that's nice. But I think if you can do those 3 breaths regularly, that's so much more impactful, because it's the consistency that really rewires the brain. But just also remembering, when we're in that state, a lot of these things that we really believe are true often aren't, because we're looking for threats. And so if we can shift our focus away from what we're actually looking for, it's called the reticular activating system in the brain, which is the part that starts filtering in important information to us. So if we're in threat response, obviously we're looking for threats, we're looking for kind of negativity, things that can harm us, which is still important when we're crossing a road or whatever, but all the time, obviously it's anxiety inducing. And if we can really start to shift that focus to the things you just mentioned, whether it's feeling gratitude, which is looking around for the things that are going right, really celebrating wins, appreciating ourselves when we make decisions that are really good for us, we're training the brain to look for them, and we're switching the filters on our reticular activating system so that we start seeing more of it. It's just, it's I think it's called, I forget the name, but when you buy a car and you see your model of car everywhere, it's the same thing. If you're looking for it and you're programmed to look for it, then you'll find more of it. So being really aware of that and add that into your breathing. It's a great way to spend a minute of your day.
We had a neuroscientist on the podcast one time, and she put it really simply: the brain believes what you tell it. And so if you just kind of walk through life and, and I kind of, to bring us back where you started, which was get curious. Like, why do you believe that? Why do you believe that that's the truth in your life? Have a little zoom out session. In Buddhism, we talk about it a lot. We talk about the idea of Mahamudra, which is to step outside of yourself and look at the way you're running your life. And, when I'm on the stage, I like to put it really simply. In the radio business, Lucy, we used to do this thing called the air check. And basically what it meant was every day you would do the radio show, and then you would sit in a room with a consultant. There were some program directors in your team, and you would listen back to the show. And the whole point of this thing was to answer 3 simple questions. What are we doing well? What are we doing okay that we need to tweak? And what should we stop doing because it sucks? And I really think that all of us have an opportunity to air check our lives. Zoom out, like look at the way Lucy's operating her life today. Look at the way Matthew's operating his life today. What am I generally getting right? What are some things that I could use a little work on? And what are some things that I'm doing to myself or saying to myself that I should probably stop today? Because if you can put that simple sequence along with all the goodness that Lucy has poured into us today, I believe that you can have a different looking and feeling life tomorrow. Like, I know that's true because I did it. Lucy knows it's true because she did it. Like, this shit works. This is the quick fix. Like, just start doing this stuff, right? It really is that simple. And you nailed it earlier. The first thing you have to do is move. You have to go towards something and try something new, because what you've been doing isn't getting it done. So I want to talk to you for like 4 hours, but we're getting ready to wind down here in the next 15 minutes. And so I'm going to defer to you. I have a million things I want to ask you, but as you prepared for our podcast today, Lucy, I'm sure there were things that you felt like, I hope we go here. I hope we talk about this thing. Or maybe you woke up this morning and there was something really heavy on your heart that you thought, I need to share this with people because this is really true for them. So I'll defer to you. The last 15 minutes will go wherever you want.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I have had a really interesting period of time. The past year or so has been a really good test for all of these tools for nervous system regulation. I really walk the talk. Everything that we do on our retreats, I do my best to keep that up. in my everyday life. Not that I spend hours on some, crazy long morning routine. It's more sort of embodying the philosophy of what we do. And then again, the not so like sexy, but really magical consistency part of really working on keeping my brain in the right place. And my father actually was diagnosed with dementia, and he's only 64 following a series of strokes. So it put a whole, kind of a crazy fire in my life of lots of things. I'm his only biological child. And so what was really fascinating for me was after, just like any journey, it's never linear. There's always these bumps and these tests. And so I kind of had to go over these series of challenges, and coming back also, I've been in Mexico, where our retreats are based, for a long time. Coming back into Europe, being around family a lot, it reopens a lot of these childhood wounds and things that maybe hadn't been fully processed. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, because it's easy at the retreat. It's easy on the beach, right?
This is the big boss. I mean, running a company in Mexico is definitely not for nervous system regulation, but but I was like, the family is the big boss. Like, it's like the ultimate time. If you can, I think the Dalai Lama has a quote, right? If you think you're enlightened, go spend 2 weeks with your family. It's so true. And obviously I love my family, but every family has certain dynamics that are challenging. And then on top of it, we're going about this very challenging situation. So fortunately, a lot of the things I do and work with, and neuroscience has been really helpful for him. But it's been a real interesting process for me, because I noticed a lot of my symptoms reappear. So things that I'd had in my childhood that I would say were like gone, figured it all out, amazing. I have incredible energy. I feel so good. And we've seen it in our guests, and they started to reappear. I was like, and so it's been this sort of process to go through and really, keep up with the processing. And I think what's so hard for most people is these days, just bandwidth. We're just so pressured, like time, energy, like they're just such precious resources. And so what we don't do is kind of suggest that people include 20 new modalities into their daily routine, or try to recreate what we do on our retreats. I don't live like that, but what I do is really try to focus on the things that are very important, in the sense of connection with nature, grounding. Where's my head at when I'm starting to like really stray and start feeling those kind of anxious thoughts or too much pressure? How do I bring myself back into that calm parasympathetic nervous system state? And so like we said, there aren't those like quick tools and tricks, but you can start to figure out what really works for you. So what we really encourage people to do and really push for them to have agency around is being their N of one experiment, because what works for me, maybe it doesn't work for you. I'm definitely on the introvert scale, like in the sense of I can't be around big groups of people for a long period of time. Like that's exhausting for me. Other people, other people is very uplifting. For me, being with the dog on the beach is like 100 out of 10 on the regulating and feeling grounded and restored. But if you can find the things that really help you feel restored, so maybe looking into things like TRE, heart rate variability training, things like breathwork can be very helpful. I think they're good for bringing up, like we call it, the sort of expansion part of the program, where I would say taps a little bit more into the existential piece, where you can feel like you're part of something bigger, tying into gratitude and feelings of love. These are all very much, it sounds like hippie, but it's all very much linked to the parasympathetic nervous system state, because they
Can
are
I ask you a quick question?
States. Yeah.
You've mentioned TRE a couple of times. I know what it is, but for the sake of the audience that doesn't understand tension release exercise, give us the Cliff's Notes on it.
Yeah, so it's one type of exercise. It's one that I personally like. There's others that are in kind of an umbrella of somatic processing. So TRE in particular is basically a series of exercises designed to help the body release adrenaline and cortisol that has been stored following like a trigger, like a stressful event that hasn't been fully completed. So we call it like a stress cycle. So for example, something happens. In the case of traumas, a lot of stress happens very quickly. The body can't quite keep up. It can't process it. And so often it isn't processed maybe in our whole lifetime, which is why it kind of can haunt us in many ways and show up in different behaviors and symptoms. And so it's a really great way to be able to help to just release these stored hormones that are and like release the tension. And sorry, there's a dog barking, so I'm distracted. Release the tension in the, that's my regulation, but not right now on the podcast.
Right.
Really release the tension in the fascia, which it tenses when we're sort of bracing or preparing for that fight or running away. And so that's when we often see, like you mentioned, one of your symptoms was back pain. And so a lot of people, they don't ever tie that to any kind of emotional link. And it's
so sad
really
to me.
common.
It's like the first thing I think about now when somebody tells me like my back hurts. I'm like, all right, what are your mommy issues? What are we doing? What are we dealing with?
How much time do we have? Let's go deep. And so it's that's it in a nutshell. But basically, it activates a shaking mechanism. So this is a mechanism that you might see in animals and small children when they're scared. The adrenaline and cortisol come up and they'll shake. And that shaking is a natural way to dissipate the adrenaline and cortisol in the system. Otherwise, it sort of stays locked, and there's more like technical terms. But most people find it really helpful. I mean, we've had 1,500 plus guests go through a program, and I would say pretty much all categorically have enjoyed it or gone on to train into it. Many have. And so
because the cool thing about TRE is like I don't have to talk about it. Like I don't have to. Yeah, and for a lot of people, they're not there, right?
Or there's no verbal memory. These are just sensations. And so you definitely want to do it. Well, you can do it online, but it's really great to do it with a practitioner because it'll help you feel much safer. And again, it's very hard to release any of these sort of emotions or stored tension. If we don't feel safe, we're just going to feel tense. So working with somebody who's officially trained, we have no affiliation with TRE, but it's been a really, really helpful tool for a lot of people. And it's something that you can add in your day that takes 5 to 10 minutes. And that's what we're looking for. Not things that are so reduced that it's like, it just becomes fluff, but things that, they're small but mighty. So extended exhales, shifting what we focus our attention on, things like TRE, they add up and they compound over time for sure.
There's so much. I mean, like I said, I feel like you're the kind of guest I could just talk to forever. I'm really intrigued by the retreats that you're offering. I'll throw it up on our screen one more time, and we'll have the link to Lucy's retreats in our show notes. But what's in a nutshell here? What's the big difference between 5, 10, and 21 days? What are some of the advantages of all of them?
Yeah, thanks for sharing them. 21 is just incredible in the sense of we have a good amount of time, and that's a good amount of time to see shifts in neuroplasticity. So the time length makes a difference in the sense of repetition, how much exposure you have to this positive environment. Most people can't take 21 days. We understand that, which is why we created a 5-day program, which is really an introduction to these tools for nervous system regulation. So we have a selection of educational workshops that go over all sorts from nervous system 101 to neuroception, which is your body's ability to sense safety and danger in any kind of situation and how that impacts other parts of your life, nutrition, sleep, biofeedback. And then we have our immersive experiences. So we do use an ice bath, but not in a way most people use them. It's not just for physiological benefits, which sometimes are not actually beneficial for some people, but it's to actually give us an opportunity to put these tools into action. So like an ice bath isn't a particularly comfortable experience, and it will trigger the nervous system. It is a stress on the nervous system. And so we do it in a certain way that we're actually able to regulate this nervous system while going through the process, help to release emotions in the process. And then what's amazing is having the group environment and a really incredible team. I love our team. They're just really skilled practitioners. And so it becomes a really safe environment to do things that are a little uncomfortable. And in that process, we're able to unlock, wind down those defenses and really unlock some of those emotions that are underneath and help to process them. And then we also do our temescal, which is basically the opposite of the ice bath. It's heat, darkness, enclosed. We're sort of trying to put our guests in uncomfortable situations.
I've done the temescal. Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah, they're great. But in the process, also working on other things. So also that helps with the more existential piece. A lot of guests actually have insight and kind of expansion of their perspective. And then breath work is another opportunity there. But because we've had this nice lead up, being able to unwind the nervous system prior, really feeling connected as a group, it's just quite a different experience. And our 10-day basically is in between that. We get to go deeper with our brain mapping, neurofeedback, more of our classes and workshops, and it just compounds on itself. And then the 21 is kind of the ultimate. But guests have had a really phenomenal results from all of them. Otherwise we wouldn't run them. We actually have data because we do our brain mapping before and after, and we can see similar results on the 10-day versus the 21. And then the 5-day, it's kind of this opportunity to learn and take that back. But guests have had significant shifts. I'm in touch with a lot of them post retreat. And we mentioned prior to recording this, we're actually working with the University of Pittsburgh on a research project, which is really exciting. And that was following results that they'd seen in patients for that had been down. So we're really excited to see that come to life too, and have something a little more tangible, because retreats often, and a really important point is men actually have probably the biggest breakthroughs and transformations. Women definitely do too, but the stories of the men really stand out to me. And I think retreats often are seen as more of a women's thing. And we have about 60-70% female audience, but the men usually are just like, wow, huge transformation. So we're always really keen to Lucy. More.
Speaking for all men, when we're ready to do something, we're ready to do something, right? Like it's not one of those things where we're like, let me give this a try. It's like, no, I'm going here to solve this. And so, I know when I went on my retreat, that was like, this isn't, we're trying this out. We're going to see what works. Like we're going all the way in, because when we leave this retreat, we either have to be different or we're going to die. And that's what it feels like for me and for loads of people. It feels like if I don't solve this, I don't see how my life continues in a healthy way. I stay stuck in survival mode. I keep being the person that I dreamed I'd never be. And that just sucks, man. That just, and it's hard to get people to understand that a lot of it is in their head, but I say that with so much love. Like it's all here. And so now let's work on that and let's simplify the process through the modalities that people like you offer. What's coming through me right now is that we need to do a learn from people who lived at retreat. We need to do me, all the audience, like we all need to like come down together. How many people can come and experience this thing at a time?
We have 11 guest rooms, so quite small group sizes. We can expand a little bit beyond that. Yeah, or come to Portugal. That's why I'm here. We are setting up our new location here in Portugal, which will
is it going to be bigger or something like that?
It's similar size. We like quite.
You have to be.
Yeah, we kind of max out at 15, which is just a great size to keep the group sort of nicely connected. You don't feel overwhelmed. And it's interesting. Most people don't want to be in a group, and myself included. I would find like some resistance, like, I don't really want to be, even though I see this like incredible group bond, and it's probably one of the most impactful parts for a lot of our guests. And they're like, wow, I just like had isolated myself. I just didn't want to be having to talk to people every day. And then at the end, they're just like in a really, really lovely, supportive way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll encourage everybody to check out the website. It's scrolling there at the bottom for people that want to look at it. Poke around on the recipes. I found a couple of really cool ones, including a fish recipe that I was like, I'm going to try that tonight. I also found an article about the importance of maybe using bone broth in the morning, which I found very interesting. So, you're putting the work in here. You're being very thoughtful about what you put on that website. And so again, have a look at a retreat. Maybe Lucy and I will get together and figure out how to learn from people who lived at retreat, which would be so cool. Oh my God, it'd be so cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Lucy. I just am so grateful that you exist and you're out there doing this work, because I know how badly people need it.
Thank you, Matthew. Yeah, we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't feel it was needed or people were benefiting. There's plenty of other things to be doing with time, but it really is a passion project, and it's been so just phenomenal to be a part of the journey for all of the people who've passed through. So yes, I would love to work on a retreat. We'll have to discuss it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1, to help you feel less alone. 2, encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3, when you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.